Welcome to That Backyard Property Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Killiner, and I'm a father, a husband, and a mortgage broker. Our goal is to inspire, educate, and empower people through property. Whether you're a first home buyer, whether you're looking to upgrade or downsize or invest in property, then we're here to help you. Each week, we'll have a special guest that's an expert in their field, and they'll guide us through all of your questions that you might have, plus a lot of other information. So let's do this. So today's guest is one of the most authentic, genuine, and fun-loving people that I know. And your voice is probably second to Basil Zemplis in the West as one of the most recognizable. Today we have the Prince of Perth Radio, Pete Curulli.
That is very kind of you, mate. Thank
Welcome.
you. I love that. Which is interesting because the Prince of Perth is actually on our station at the moment, Ben Cousins. But yeah, it's good to be here. Hi, this is your first podcast.
First one.
First podcast.
Yeah, first one.
And it's a really interesting day too because we're keeping one eye on the podcast and one eye on the US election.
We are.
One of the most divided US elections in American history.
I don't know which one's going to be watched more.
Yeah.
But we'll wait and see how our viewers go.
I've been told we're keeping just in the background. I've asked if we can just keep an eye on whether or not Trump will declare victory during this because it's good for posterity.
It is. And if he declares it, it might not actually be the truth anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows what is the truth?
100%. Yeah.
So thanks for coming.
Pleasure.
It's really cool to have you on. And today we're just going to be talking about property and all sorts of things, obviously radio as well. But I reckon we kick it off with something that everyone can resonate with and just hear about what was your first experience of a home, whether that be your first home with parents, your first property experience of buying a home. Tell us about it.
My first experience of a home. The immediate reaction that I have to that question is the house that I grew up in. And the reason being is because that is what I always go back to as what I want home to be, and it's what I want home to feel like for our family. It's what I want home to feel like for our kids. And we're very tied and connected to our home. And my parents still live in the home that I grew up with. And I don't know if it's because it is an amazing home there on, or you just can't get a quarter acre 15 minutes out of the city anymore. It just doesn't exist.
Not for $50,000. No,
absolutely. Well, actually, I tell you, it was $3,000.
Yeah.
It was $3,000. I know the story inside and out because, for us growing up in our generation with housing prices and property and all that sort of stuff that it is now, it's often the thing of like, oh, well, you guys, you didn't have to pay the prices that we have to pay these days. You know what I mean? And like my parents are a shining example of that.
Yeah.
Dad was a machinist, fitter and turner as an apprentice, worked for a guy called Frank Hardy out the back of Maddington somewhere, and earned like less than $100 a week.
Yeah.
And they got married at 19, him and my mum. Mum was data entry for Spice's Papers, which was across the road from where they had their first house. But it was my nonno, that's Italian for grandfather, or Italian heritage, who purchased 3 blocks next to each other, a block over from where they lived on Railway Parade in Queen's Park.
How good.
And one was for Mum, one was for my Uncle Frank, and one was for Mum's twin sister, my Auntie Kat. Yep. And they were given that, I believe, on as a wedding gift, right? So and I think it cost him $3,000, for each property. It's a quarter acre.
Yeah.
And it was still when Queen's Park was full of like dairy farms and stuff like that. Now it's train lines and housing and high rises and all that sort of gear. And I think Mum and Dad's house cost them $24,000 to build. I think.
Amazing.
And a good house.
Yeah.
There's a lot of houses these days where you walk in, the ceiling's caving in and they were only built within the last 20 years. Like their house is still kicking.
Solid.
Yeah. My nonna helped build that house, but he built it.
Yeah.
He was a concreter.
I was about to say probably plenty of concrete.
Yes, concrete. Lots of concrete everywhere, concrete. But yeah, that was that, But the thing about that house for me, and just coming back to the whole idea of, the family home, is that our house was the house where the front door was always open and the backyard was always there for you. Like there were always people that were there, always, whether it be family, whether it be friends. It was filled with love and laughter and family and friends and, parties. And it was always the sort of thing where people would come over, they would celebrate, they would enjoy, they would have the party on the Saturday. It would go until all hours of the Saturday night, Sunday morning. And then they'd either stay the night or they'd come back the following day to finish off the leftovers.
Yep.
And for me, that is the warmth that I felt in that house. It's why I feel so connected to that house. And it's exactly the same sort of feeling that I want for my own kids. I think it's a beautiful thing.
So if we take you back, is there a smell? Is there a sound? Is there one of the senses that you can feel when you're stepping back into it, because they still have it?
Yeah.
But when you look back in your memories, is there something really memorable around that?
There are three things in particular. One is the smell of espresso from the pot of coffee on the stove. There was always a pot of coffee on the stove first thing in the morning, always. Cafetiera, ready to go. The other thing was weekends when Mum would put a sauce on, right, to make whatever pasta we were going to have, for Sunday and people coming over and stuff. The other thing, and I love this because I still get this today, was the house itself is it's a 3-bedroom with a garage that was converted into it was a carport converted into a games room.
Yep.
3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. The good lounge room at the front. And then the family room at the back, and then the backyard and all that sort of stuff. But it was a fairly long hallway from the family room at the back to the front of the house. But you could see that hallway, and you could see the front door from generally where we'd sit as kids watching the television. And on spring weekends, Mum would always have that door open, and there'd always be a breeze.
Yeah.
And you could always smell spring. and I every time I open our front door this time of year, because we're in spring, we're recording this at the beginning of November, it's that the smell comes through our house, and it immediately takes me back there. That I know I said 3 things, so there's one more. There was also a fire. We had a wood fire, and that for me, is I've always wanted a wood fire, because it immediately takes me back there.
That takes you to home.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
It's just those little things,
Oh, it's funny
those little things.
because you mentioned like the smell, and the reason why I say smell is growing up in Darwin, and the smell for you is spring, and so the smell for me is in Darwin. October, November are traditionally really hot. It's called mango madness. But the first rain comes in, and as soon as that first rain hits the bitumen, the smell just gravitates.
100%.
And so you get that here, but in Darwin, you knew that as soon as that rain hit the bitumen, there was going to be plenty of it. And it's going to come down really hard. And so that smell, it's funny. There's something about smell that takes you right back into the memory.
Oh, mate, right back. I still remember I will always remember, now I'm going to say this out loud and I might have it wrong, but I will always remember that No Doubt's I'm Just a Girl, right, the hit song by No Doubt, came out in 1996, it might be 95, and that's because we were in Kalbarri, and there was the horrid smell of like socks in the air, which is another smell you can smell up and down Tonkin Highway, right? At a particular time of year, but it was that particular time of year, and that was the hit song on the radio at the time. So every time I smell that driving down Tonkin Highway, I think, I'm back in Kalbarri and it's 1996 listening to Gwen Stefani and No Doubt. Like it's, so it's so powerful. But you have to tap into them, because that's, ultimately that's what takes you home.
It is, and I guess being a father now, and there's something that's quite special about you trying to relive those memories and for your children. And I think that when we're talking about property or home, that's what you're trying to relive with your own children. And how have you found it being your own home now and trying to relive those same memories. Are you conscious of that?
Very. In fact, I talk about it a lot. But I feel like it's harder for us to build that life for our kids. I think it is.
How so?
Because we're in the middle of we're living a cost of living crisis, right? And we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but we always had enough to have people around. And I don't remember life being as busy. I don't know if it was because I was a kid and life's not meant to be as busy. Yeah. You know, I was, you know, the most important thing that I had of the day was to make sure that I caught the latest episode of Dragon Ball. So I could make sure I got to school and go, hey, everybody, Goku went Super Saiyan today. Oh my goodness. Or, you know, the new Nintendo game coming out or, you know, that sort of stuff. And Dad ran a seafood business in Fremantle at the wool stores. And he was working a lot, and Mum was working a lot too. You know, we were quite often over at my grandparents' house morning and evenings because they were working a lot. And yet, for all the time that they were working, I still feel like they had so much time for family and friends and for things happening on the weekend. And for all the money we didn't have, we always had a lot of money to have family and friends over, even though they were struggling and making ends meet. And we almost lost the house, like all those sorts of stuff. Whereas I don't feel the same way today. Like I feel like we're under a lot of pressure. We're under a lot of pressure from work. We're under a lot of pressure to provide things for our kids. We're under a lot of pressure to maintain a particular lifestyle, to pay the mortgage, to eat, to put things on the table. But to a degree where I find it very hard to have people over often. Like, mate, we've been mates for a long time, right? You and you know. Our wives are both incredible mates. And I often think to myself, why can't we all just have catch-ups every weekend? Right? And I'd love that. But then I look in my wallet and I go, how am I going to feed everyone? Like this is an honest to God thing right now, you know? And then we also think about time and stress. And I don't know if it's because the kids are so young.
Yeah. And
as I've been told that as it gets older and they become a little bit more self-sufficient, it gets easier.
Yeah.
But that's what it feels like today, and I'm saddened by that because it feels like a burden. Because I want the kids to have a household where there were always people around. You know.
I wonder whether the burden is just something that you then feel as a parent in that sense, and that your parents probably felt the same burden, that they sheltered you and protected you from that. Possibly.
No, they had it way easier.
Way easier. Yeah,
no,
right,
no,
way easier.
No, the way easier.
Yeah, way easier.
Don't try to give me with your philosophical crap. Right? No, you know what? You're right. I've thought about this, and this is we'll never know unless we actually have the conversation. I'm very open and honest with my parents, and the same back the other way. We have a great relationship. I absolutely love them. We find ourselves a lot around the dinner table talking about all sorts of things. And I often, especially with my brother. Who has a lot of the same views that I have as well in their family and stuff. And we find ourselves talking about, the good old days. But my parents also talk about their version of the good old days, and everything's a new normal for the next person coming through or the next generation. So will we ever know? I don't know the answer to that question. Did they have it as easy or as hard as us? I don't know the answer to that question. It's just our truth and our normal feels incredibly difficult,
It does.
Do you feel the same way or not?
I do, but I kind of view it as a season as well.
It's a bloody long season.
It's a really long season.
I've got an 8-year-old. It's felt like I've been in this season for 8 years. If winter lasted 8 years, I'd be absolutely pissed. I'd be so upset.
Well, yeah, I agree. But then you might get 8 years of summer. I don't know.
That's
or
true.
8 years of spring.
It'd be bloody hot.
Yeah.
I love it when summer comes through, but after a little while, I'm like, come on, bring on winter.
Oh, I struggle with summer just based on my skin complexion. There's a lot of sunscreen that goes through our household.
Yeah, right. I can imagine. Yeah.
So take us, I guess, like if we're talking about the memories and we're talking about the here and now, we both know the journey that you went on to buy your current property, and we don't need to go into the details of that, but the reason why I wanted to mention it, and I think it's really important for other people to hear of the struggles that someone can go through to purchase a property, whether it's your first, your second, your third, whatever it might be. And one of the most common questions I get asked every day is, how do I go from my current home, which I may have bought as just me, and now I've got kids and you want to upsize or grow the family home. How do I go from this property to the next one? And there's so much fear around the unknown and cost of living crisis and whatnot. But one of the biggest issues that people have is they just don't quite know how to take that step. And you really have to sacrifice a lot to take the step. And the hardest part people find is that they don't know other people are going through the same issues or problems. And so every day when I'm saying, this is such a common issue, being able to go from one home to the next because of family.
Because we're scared that going from that one home to the next might be the last time we ever do it because we stuff it up.
Yep.
And that was us. And, I can't answer that question in terms of this is the way to do it, because even where we're at now, I don't know what the future holds. But the best way I can answer this question is to give you the journey we've been on, right? And you've been there since the very beginning. You sat in that. Let's go back. So it was 2014. It was 2014. God, it's a lifetime ago. Oh my God. It was 2014.
Life was a bit easier then.
It was a lot easier, right?
Different season.
Yeah. Our first house that Liz and I purchased was in Queensland, right, for 2 years. We travelled the country for 3 years for me, following the radio dream. And we were in Queensland. We were both on stuff all. I think between us, we made less than $100,000 a year.
Yep.
And it was actually, were you at my wedding? You were at my wedding, weren't you?
No, I wasn't.
No, you weren't.
Yeah,
it was mine.
I wasn't around yet.
Weren't you?
No, I wasn't around yet. Maybe I was just on the scene. Yeah, maybe I was just coming on the scene.
Are you serious?
Yeah, deadly. Yeah. You were at mine though, so made up for it.
Are you serious? You weren't at my wedding.
No.
How dare
You're going to have another one.
Could have sworn I said you about it. We will have to have another one.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Now that that's blown my head off, I don't even know where I was going with that point. So it was 2014. We'd decided to come home. We'd bought this incredible property in Queensland, halfway between the Gold Coast and Brisbane. And we'd bought it for $495,000, which to us at the time was an incredible amount of money. And I used $100,000 that my grandparents had left me as a gift when they passed away, as a down payment on that house. And it was a 2-story beauty. It was an absolute beauty of a thing. Like the sort of thing.
Queenslander.
No, it wasn't a Queenslander. It was a very modern house. Yeah. And it was on 600 and something square meters in a fairly new estate. It was $495,000. In today's money, that house, I hate myself because every now and again I go and check. That house is in the millions. Like it's nuts, right? It's proper nuts, right? But therein lies, we'll come back to this point, because therein lies the journey, right? And how you can't live in the past. Even though we spent the first 15 minutes of this podcast talking about living in the past.
Yeah.
Right, but $495,000, we could hardly make the mortgage payments on it, but we did it. We moved back to Perth at the end of 2013. 2014 comes around. We needed to get rid of our debt to be able to buy a house in Seville Grove, which is in the out of suburbs near Armidale of Perth. And the house that we wanted to purchase was worth $495,000 as well. Now, we held on to Queensland. We borrowed a bit of money from my wife's parents to be able to get ourselves across the line to buy Seville Grove. It was like, let's hold on to them both. We struggled so hard to the point where we had to get rid of Queensland, right? We were like, we've got to clear some debt here just to be able to eat. And we just about had to let Queensland go at a loss, right? But we managed to get $495 for it again. And we were like, it's cost us money, but we're going to cut our losses here, get out. And we used that and then not having that anymore as an opportunity to pay down all of the other debt, personal loans and this, that and the other, right? But at that stage, I was starting to already hate property, right? I was upset because we had just been through a boom period not long before that, 2008 to 2013.
Yeah.
People were making so much money
money
out of
was easy.
properties blowing up, right? Much like it is now. And I was like, why didn't we make any money, right? I was like, I hate property. Stuff it. I only want something I can live in and whatever. Bought this other thing for $495. And then we had our first daughter while we were living in that house. And she got to 2 years old and we started looking around at schools and we really wanted her to go to Bletchley Park, which was in Harrisdale, Southern River. So we were like, okay, well, maybe this is an opportunity to move. And
that's when I came in.
That's when you came in. That's right. That is when you came in. Again, we went to the bank of in-laws and said, hey, please, can we borrow a little bit? And they said, yes, you may, which was fantastic. You helped us there. And we bought that house for $495. We sold it for $420. And you think I hated houses when we sold Queensland? Oh boy! And I was filthy. I was absolutely filthy because we'd lost 70 grand. Now we're a couple of kids, right? Because we'd also just had our second. We'd lost money again. We were 70 grand in the hole. The thing that got us across the line was that the house that we bought in Southern River was a perler, and they had built the house for $100,000 more than what we purchased it for. So we were like, you know what? It evens it out.
Yep.
Okay? That was 2018? Was it 2018?
Yeah,
It was, wasn't it? It was 2018. Yeah. We got in there just before 2018.
Yep.
And then we spent a few beautiful years, right, in that house. And then we went through COVID. The arse fell out of everything. Actually, before we bought Southern River, we initially tried to get north of the river. We tried, but we couldn't afford it, right? Like Southern River was a $630,000 house, and we were looking at that going, how the hell are we going to afford this? Oh my God, we're going to be paying this off for the rest of our lives. It is amazing. It is amazing how you think when you're only just starting to get onto the property ladder. We've had this discussion many times. Right? You're so narrow-minded and small-minded, right?
That's all you know.
It's all you know. It is all you know. But Jesus, I wish someone would have come in and said, "Hey, mate, I know this is what it feels like right now. Don't worry, it's going to get better. Have a go." Anyway, we went through. We got that house. 2020. So 2020, COVID hits, and it was actually a funny story, right? I love the fact we're doing a podcast. So I can tell a few funny stories. So funny story, I was on a show called Xavier, Jules and Pete, and it was the beginning of 2020, and COVID was just starting to be a bit of a thing, right? Now, the first ship in Sydney that got quarantined. Do you remember there was a ship in Sydney got quarantined? Yeah. You remember that, right?
Princess
Elizabeth or something. The world is stuffed, whatever, right? We were sitting in the studio. It was early on a Monday morning, and we were all sort of looking around and going, this COVID thing, what is it? What are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? And then they were like, do you want to speak to someone? You want to speak to a reporter or something like that? And I suppose so. I mean, it'll probably blow over in a week. Anyway, it was like a year later, 18 months later, or whatever it happens to be, right? Yeah. But, that many people. So, so that's happened. COVID's happened. The arse has fallen out of everything. Everybody's going, the world's on fire. Like, how about yours? And then, houses started to tick up again, and property started to tick up again, and everything started to slowly get back to normal. And by this stage, I'd moved on to a new show, and we still had the goal of let's get north of the river, right? It was going to get my wife closer to her family. Our dream was we always wanted to live near the beach, right? Let's see if we can make it happen. And I was in the studio again with the new team, and I was having a laugh, and I was like, you know what, the prices are going up in real estate. It'd be funny. Like, if I put my house on the market and just see what happens.
Yeah.
I went home and I actually spoke to Liz about it. And I said, let's just get a real estate agent in. Now, we'd bought this house for $630. This is Southern River. And I said, if we get this real estate agent in and they come at us with a 9 in front, would we seriously consider it? We chatted about it. I was like, okay. Yeah, all right, let's give it a go. And we got a real estate agent over and he came in and he goes, yeah, you probably get 950. I was like, what? No. And then he goes, okay, we'll see you later. Let me know. I said, let's get another one in. And if they give us a 9 as well, apropos of nothing, we'll see. They came in. Yeah, you probably get 950 for this. Well, I just went, oh my God, this is amazing.
I don't hate property anymore.
I don't hate property. I love
How
property.
easy is this?
We might have lost, $70,000 or $100,000, but look at that. We've made it back and then some. My wife is so much better at the entire situation, right? And having a look at the whole picture than I am, right? I saw it and I went, we've made a couple $100,000. We're at 9. We've got this much. We can do it. Let's go north of the river, right? We put our house on the market at 950. We saw that the market was moving. We thought that we'd hit the peak of the market in 2022.
Yep.
Little did we know that at the moment that we'd signed the document to say, congratulations, you've sold the house, you got this offer, we got 900 for it, that the market would not only keep moving, but we'd see the most inflated figures in Australian history when it comes to property. And coming back to that discussion around the kids and family and feeling a home, I did not expect to get emotional about this.
It was a tough time. It was a really tough time. I remember being on the other side of the phone call.
You've been our mortgage. You've been a friend and our mortgage broker throughout this entire journey, right? So you've seen all of it. When we agonised over signing that contract to accept that offer, because that home. And it's so funny because today we're in here recording this and behind you is my middle daughter. Yeah. And my middle daughter was very tied to that house, very tied. And we, with a lot of pushing from me, ultimately chose to sell the house. And the following morning after my wife had signed the contract, we sat on the floor of the office bawling our eyes out because we had actually thought that we'd made one of the biggest mistakes of our entire life. Yeah. And we hadn't even gone looking for property yet, right? And it was so hard because all we could do was look around that house and see the incredible memories that we'd made and how we had just decided to toss all that in at a shot at the dream, right? But Christ, it's so hard balancing. There's this thing that you feel as a father and as a husband and and as someone who loves his family so dearly. There's this thing that you feel that you want to continue to grow and you want to give the kids the best life. You want to give your wife the hopes and dreams of living next to the beach, getting closer to family, all that sort of stuff. You feel it deep within your bones and you see the opportunity come along. But you are also fighting the feeling of what are we giving up to get that done? And after we signed that contract, I saw my wife and I saw the kids, but in particular our middle one, coming to terms with it, and I thought to myself, Christ almighty, what have I done? And that ended up kicking off the hardest 2 years of our lives ever. I had so much regret. I thought that I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Because shortly after we sold Codrington Street in Southern River and we'd made the money and thought, okay, we can go ahead, we can start looking. We went out and we started looking. And we started looking north of the river. And I will never forget, we were in Corrine. And this was the first time when I went, oh, Christ, like really, what have we done? Because we went to a house in Corrine and it was a stunning house. And we rocked up and I was not prepared for what was going to happen that day. We rocked up, we parked the car. Not only were we there, but there were probably 100 other families there too. This was halfway through 2022. We'd just sold. And I got out of the car and I really didn't think of anything of it, but I noticed there were a lot of people there.
Oh, it's sticky beaks here.
Yep. Big line out the door. And the interesting thing was, with our house in Southern River, it took us 4 weeks to sell the house. We had a few people through and we had one offer.
Yeah.
So we set it on 900 because we got it done. This was about a month later. There were 100 families there, line out the door, and they had offers coming in hand over fist. And I walked up to the agent that day and I said to him, what do you expect this house to go for? And the house was on for offers over 900, right? And I thought we'd just sold for 900, so we should be okay. Offers over 900, and he goes, it's offers over 900, but looking around here, I wouldn't expect anything less than maybe 1.1, 1.15. And I broke.
Yeah.
I broke. And we fought for that house. We fought hard, back and forth. We stretched. We called the bank of mum and dad again, all that sort of stuff. We went hard. And that house ultimately ended up going for 1.31. That house now will be worth anywhere between 1.6 to 2.
Yeah.
I reckon. And that was house number one. Between now and where we've moved in, and there's a bit of a journey in between which we'll cover, but between now and what we've moved into, we threw offers and fought for 16 different houses.
And I can't imagine the difficulty of, obviously you find an attachment to a house, that's why you put an offer in, but explaining to kids that this is going to be their house again and again must be one of the hardest parts.
Not as hard as it was explaining to our middle one that this house that you've fallen in love with and you call your home, that you're so tied to, is not going to be our house anymore. I was in so much chaos in my mind shortly after we'd sold Codrington that I tried my best to try and keep everybody buoyant and just tried to push on hard and, motivated and all that sort of stuff. And the night before we had to move out of that place, and I just didn't get it at the time. And now I've got the opportunity to look back on it and have done and reflected, and I do it so often. But I took my eldest and my youngest. Oliver was only, I don't think it was a year. No, it was a little over a year. And then we went and stayed at my parents' house. My wife and our middle one stayed at Codrington Street and spent the last night there. And I didn't understand at the time what that meant to her and what that meant to our middle daughter. And I didn't give that enough. I didn't give it enough. And I didn't take the opportunity enough to support them and love them through that moment. Yeah, because we'd made the decision, and I was so conflicted as to whether or not it was the right decision. But we'd made the decision that all I could do was just push on.
Yeah,
but I did it to the detriment of not being able to take that moment in and give it what was necessary. We ended up renting that back off the new owners. Oh God, that you know what? That was heartbreaking. That was one of the most heartbreaking things, because that house was at that point worth $750 or $800 a week in rent. At that stage, midway through 2022, we couldn't find another house, right? So there was that house in Kareen, and then there were a few others. We got desperate and panicked.
Yeah.
We even started looking back in Southern River again because we were looking at the property market going, let's just keep on going. There's more and more people every house. So it's like, okay, we just got to get back in. We got to get back in. We got to get back in. We have to. But we kept on going to houses and then comparing them to what we had at Codrington Street and going, I'm not paying $700 for this. I'm not paying $800 for this. This is ridiculous. What we had at Codrington Street, but we bought that house at a time when the property market was in the shit. Yeah. So it's like, what are we going to do? And then we rented the house back, and 6 months of paying the new owners $700 a week, which was essentially the money that we'd made.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we'd made the money on the house and then I was paying it back to these people and it just felt, it was horrendous. We panicked. We looked around. And then by some miracle, an agent, while I was going to look at another house, we got so desperate to try and make the right decision. Like we felt we'd made the wrong decision. We were trying to make it right and make the right decision. We got so desperate that we were going to look at, is it mortgagee sales? When the bank's taking them?
Yeah.
And we walked into this one house in Southern River. Yeah. Light fittings falling out of the ceiling, paint peeling off the walls, the garden's in absolute disarray. And it was basically a sight unseen with a one opportunity to walk in, take a look. You've got 5 minutes, then you've got to get out. If you'd like to have a go, have a go. We were desperate, right? But by some miracle, the lady who had that house, I don't know if she saw me and my wife and the 3 kids and had the wherewithal to look at us and not see us as money and instead see us as a family. She went, don't buy this one. I have another one which I think will be better for you, which was also a mortgagee sale. So you had to take it as is. It was on Lakey Street in Southern River. The ceilings were maybe a foot higher than my head. It was on 500 square metres, so we'd lost 200 square metres. Barely enough backyard to put the kids' ninja set in. And funnily enough, it was the exact same house design as the first house we bought in Seville Grove. The exact same house design.
Yeah.
And we walked in and I looked at my wife and I was like, I just can't believe this. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe we had gone through what we'd gone through and we were about to throw $600,000 on 200 square meters less. Right, and you got to remember, this is in the mind of we had bought Codrington Street, which was a Stannard home, which is a real premium build, which we found out down the track, with wooden floorboards and just a beautiful home, had a pool and a big backyard which we'd worked hard on, and all this sort of stuff. Really high ceilings. We were about to toss that in to buy 500 square metres with the ceiling a foot higher than I was, which was the same design as the house we'd first bought in Seville Grove, which we'd lost $70,000 for, and we were about to buy that for $600,000. And I just could not believe it. And it was a mortgagee sale, which means you had to take it as is. We couldn't test lights. We couldn't test the air conditioning. We couldn't test anything. But we took a punt and we went, okay, let's just do it. We've got to settle. And we did. So this is the beginning of 2023. And we moved into that house. It meant that the kids could still go to the same school because now we got kids. We didn't want to uproot the kids, right? We don't want to try and send them to another school or this, that, and the other and make their lives as the chaos that it already was, any more than it already was. And we ended up getting that house for $600,000. It was in really good condition. And then the things that we weren't allowed to test, thankfully they worked. Yeah. Everything worked, right? Which was unbelievable. And the market kept going up. And we turned that $600,000 into 740, I think. I think it was
a short period of time.
In 6 months.
Yeah, in 6 months. Yeah.
In 6 months. And the reason why we ended up pulling the trigger and doing that is only because the very first goal when we sold Codrington Street of let's get into another place and rent it, right? And then give ourselves time to sort ourselves out and find blah, blah, blah. A house for rent within a price range we felt was reasonable in Southern River to be able to keep the kids at school, see out the end of the year, came up for rent.
Yeah.
And it was across the road from a cousin of mine. And it was like the puzzle pieces just started falling together. We were like, let's do it, right? Let's go. Anyway, so we sold that. We made an extra $100,000. Yeah. Okay, so all of a sudden we've made a bit of money on top of the money that we made. I love oh my God, property is amazing. How good is this?
How easy is it?
How easy is it? No, it's so bloody difficult. And then we moved into this other house. We stayed there for 6 months. And over the course of that 6 months, we spent every single weekend going to home opens.
Yeah.
And that was, again, one of the most agonizing things because we just felt so sorry for the kids. Every evening we were on our phones looking at realestate.com.au. Every second evening I was putting an offer on a house and then having these agonizing conversations with real estate agents. Every third evening, we were going to another home open to go and take a look. Every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, we're going. And you say to yourself, I'm not going to have a look at this damn app for a week. I need a break. Yeah. But what if there's a house that comes up that you miss?
Yeah.
Right? So that was it. So we're going through that. That lasted for months. That was going through the back end of 2023. Yep, 2023. And we went out to go and see a place in Guelph. In September, October 2023. And we went out and had a look at this place in Guelph. Now, we could afford the place in Guelph, but it was going to cost us 1.2 something. In the end, this is by the time it got sold.
Yeah.
Right? But we could get into Guelph, 1.2. It was 600 odd square meters. It was a single story, but we're sitting there. I can't believe some of the conversations that we had. Yeah. Like, honestly, when you look back on it and go, how stupid were we? We were sitting there. Yeah, but this is what desperation does to you. We're sitting there and we're looking at this house and we're going, okay. So if we can get this place for like 1.05, we could put a second story on and we could knock down that wall. And we could swap out that. And I know the backyard's absolutely horrendous, but you know what? We could rip up all the bricks and we could put a pool in. That'd probably cost us another 50, 80 grand, I don't know. So, you know, in the end, this house went for 1.2 something.
Yeah.
Right? And I was making phone calls to companies, renovation companies, going, how much would it cost us to lift a second story onto this thing? I was actively having those conversations, right? That house in Guelph, we went back to see it for a second time, which was just about unheard of because houses were going in the first week. Right. And it just so happened that there was another home in a suburb near there that had a home open shortly after Guelph, which we hadn't even considered. But because we were in the area, we decided to go and have a look. And we walked in and just went, oh, this is it. This is the one. Yeah. And it was a feeling that we hadn't had since the first day we walked into Codrington to initially buy that house. And I think, although we didn't know it at the time, I think that was the feeling that we were chasing the entire time. All we had to do now was buy the damn thing, which if the other 15 times we tried to do that was anything to go by, was going to be quite a struggle.
Yeah.
Ultimately, after a few back and forths, we managed to get it done. And here's a little hot tip, right, for anybody who's looking at purchasing property, okay? The $4,000 that you're agonizing over doesn't mean jack shit, okay? Throw an extra 5 on there and make it a 9.
Yeah.
All right? Because this is the thing. This was the really dumb thing. And again, don't know enough about property. I don't know if I will ever know enough about property, but Christ almighty, by that stage I knew a bit about property.
Yeah.
I'd learnt a bit, right? And through the other 15 times of getting it wrong, the reason why we got it right this time is because we did a couple of things different based on what we'd learned.
Yeah.
Right? Because so many times we went, we can't go, we're not going to go there. Don't be ridiculous. Well, just go. Like, go there. So many times we went, let's pick the whole number, which was, we'll say 1, 1.05, 1.07, 1.1. Like, there was always a whole number, right? There was always the conversation of, can we really afford an extra $4,000? Well, guess what? You bloody well can. Like, if you're in the market at 1.34, if you can't afford 1.34, guess what? You can't afford 1.349.
Yeah.
So you're not there for 1.34. So what are you doing? Yeah. Right? So at that stage, I think I was the right amounts of pissed off with the right amounts of had learnt just enough to be able to go, we are getting this done. And somehow we managed to get it done. Mm. And did I call you? I called you that day, didn't I?
Yeah.
How did I sound? Because
relieved.
This is how, I think that's what it was, right? I wasn't even celebrating. I was relieved.
Oh, I could hear a little man dancing inside you, but he wasn't. You weren't allowing yourself to be excited yet.
No, because I think I'd been through it that many times that I didn't believe it. Like, until we signed the contract on the house, I didn't believe it was happening, and I wouldn't let myself believe it was happening, because this house didn't just represent we managed to get a house. This house represented so many other things. It represented we get our weekends back.
Yeah.
It represented we get our evenings back. I can put down realestate.com.au. I can sit there with my kid and watch whatever show they're watching. This house, and getting this house represented we got ourselves back on the property ladder again. It meant that all of the mistakes and the education and the years that it took us to get to that stage were worth it. This house, all the little things, like this house, you know, we could paint the kids' rooms a colour that they like, and we can put photos up on the wall of our family again. Like, you know, we could make this house their home, and it meant stability for them, and it meant that they could go to a school and they could stay there. And I will hold on to this place with bare knuckles, like just so tight, because of all the things that I learned. This was the most horrendous time of our lives, but Christ, did I learn some life lessons about what's important, right? Now, I think property and owning a property is important because I think it's good for your future, right? I'm a property person. I've told you this. I told you this today.
Yeah.
I'm a property person. My wife and I are property people, right? But I learned that there is so much more to life than making money and making money on property. Over those years, I learned that a stable home and an opportunity for your kids to have a good life and to have a space that they can call their own and to have a space that you can have people over and all that sort of stuff. Like, that's ultimately what I took out of that entire thing. And that's what this represents for us.
And you think there's an element to you then, if we dial right back to the initial intro with you describing your parents' place, is effectively what you've created?
Yeah. Or at least we're on our way. Because like most of these houses, they need renovations. So we're renovating.
Yeah,
so
it's a journey.
Christ, it's a journey. And anybody who's renovating in this current market knows it's hard. It's bloody hard. But it's a journey, and it's a journey worth walking the path on. And it's a journey we're not done with yet. You know, our goal now is like to pay the mortgage down on this house, and it's to create this home, this beautiful place for our kids and for our family to have stability. But it is to pay the mortgage down on this house and then have enough equity there to buy another home and do it up and flip it. And it's funny. Some people might sort of like hear that and go, "What are you doing? Like you just spent the last 40 minutes detailing this journey of like why you would never touch another house again." Well, no, the reality is we need to grow. Like that's something I believe in. And if you don't use the lessons that you've been taught, how do you get any better? And we're better at it now. Yeah. We know what to do now, you know?
Bit of real life lived experience.
Exactly. The lived experience. So but I also know now, go into it with your eyes wide open. Like I did when we sold Codrington, I was so blind. I thought we made a heap of money and nobody else did. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And then I walked out and went, "Oh, everybody else is making money too." Okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you use the lessons life has taught you to do it better next time.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably when you look at it for anyone else that's in the same position or going through it or have just been through it, there's an element to realising that the world hasn't ended.
No, it's tough. Yeah.
But someone else is going through the same tough experience that you are.
Yeah, they are. And I think, I look a lot on social media. Every day there's half a dozen posts in every, suburban chat group that we've ever been a part of. And we've been a part of a few of them now. Of people going, "Hey, look, we're a family of 4 or we're a family of 5. We've got this budget. Is there anybody out there looking to sell a home?" Like, people are desperate. I'm so thankful that we've managed to secure one and get, our family into this position. But I'm so mindful of the other 98. I'll say 98 because there were 100 families there at Kareen that day.
Yeah.
One of them got it. Yeah. But there were 98 other families that missed out. Yeah. And I'm mindful of them because it doesn't look like it's getting easier, It's not a reason to quit, but it doesn't look like it's getting easier. It's tough.
Yeah, and we're not taught any of this at school.
No,
but
we bloody well should be. There's so many things. There's so many things now I see as an adult where I like, man, the education system is doing the best that it can, but geez, they could tweak it a little bit. In high school, when's the last time you used algebra or geometry and trigonometry? When's the last time that you had a look at the periodic table? When is it?
Well, only when I get asked the Sunday quiz.
Right, the Sunday quiz, okay? The pop quiz. You get your little meat tray quiz. And off you go, right?
Yeah,
that's fine. But, why is there, and I'm asking this seriously, why is there not a year 11 or year 12 where you can spend 12 months learning about property or accounting or finances?
Or home loans.
Or home loans. Things that you get out of school and you go, oh, this is the way the world works. You know what I mean? Like, bring a little bit of that. That'd be nice. It'd be nice to see. But yeah,
it would be.
Yeah,
big journey,
huge journey,
a lot of emotions.
I'm so exhausted.
Yeah. And now you're renovating.
I know.
Now you're renovating.
I know.
It doesn't stop.
During this, my phone started buzzing.
Yeah.
And I know who it is. It's the plumber who's meant to be at our house in about 30 minutes. Because they're meant to be putting stuff into the walls, into the bathroom that we're doing for the kids. It's taken us months. Jeez.
Well, if there was ever a time to wrap it up so you could get your plumber into your house.
Yeah, please, because if I lose this, it'll be another week. It'll be a few weeks. Yeah, it will. Yeah.
And to be honest, we'll be able to check the results, see how the blue and the red are going over in the US.
There's a production team here. Have we got the updates or what? Has Trump won yet? No? Okay. I'm actually getting the wind-up. I got the wind-up, which is hilarious because that's the wind-up I get every morning when I'm doing the breakfast show. And it's from my own producer. I feel like I'm at home.
Good.
Yeah.
That's what it should feel like here.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey now, but also through the late night calls and the weekend calls.
Thank you. Because honestly, we would not have gotten through it because you've been more than a mortgage broker, you've been a friend, and you have been someone that I can call late at night and go, I'm losing my mind here. I actually think, no, I did. Do you remember when we sold Codrington, I called you the following day after we'd had a meltdown. Yeah. And I said, I feel like I've made a big mistake. And you said, mate, it's going to be okay. And
Good answer.
And it did. It was. It was, right? Yeah, you'd be screwed if you had said that and it wasn't okay. But ultimately, it worked out well.
Bit of pressure.
No, mate, we're so thankful.
No, thank you.
So thankful.
Thanks for coming on.
Good on you.
Thanks for sharing. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of our community at That Backyard Property Podcast. We would love it if you could like, comment, or even share with a family member or a friend that might get something useful from today's episode. We can't wait to see you again next Tuesday.